So I say D, I say D-O, D-O-D, D-O-D-G, D-O.
One of the great things about doing this show is you get to talk some hard subjects with some really knowledgeable people. And I am extremely blessed to be speaking with one here, Jim Dreher, the editor of the Town Times in Western Connecticut. And Jim, how are you? How are things?
I'm fine. How are you? Happy New Year, even though we're this far in. Still, it's a new year for us.
It certainly is, and certainly an interesting one. And you know, typically when we've done these interviews, I've made up my laundry list of things, which really, it's almost like a list of grievances.
Tony, typically when we've done these interviews, I've been on my second cup of coffee in the morning. This is new territory for us.
No matter what, it gets your blood boiling. But
yes.
You know, I am entirely lost, or maybe I'm somewhat found, but I'm certainly, angry about this whole yard goats thing and the stadium and the additional money, and no one seems to be telling the truth, and all this development that's supposed to happen, and nobody knows where the development is, and the team is going to be playing on the road, and you tell me what's happening.
Oh, well, I'll tell you one thing that's happening for sure. They're having extended happy hours at the bars in New Britain, that's for sure. I'll tell you, I didn't like this from the get-go. Obviously, Hartford is one of America's worst capital cities. The image of it is awful.
Terrible.
It's turned into a ghost town since the Whalers left. You roll up the sidewalks at 5 o'clock. You don't even have Coach's Bar and Grill there anymore. You have some UConn games that are not guaranteed sellouts anymore. You don't get the great concerts at the XL Center, and the building itself is a relic. It's obsolete. So I understand in theory what they were trying to do, but there have been studies after study after study over the decades that building these ballparks and these Xanadu type of shopping plazas and whatever do not work. They do not drive economic development. They don't bring people in. The fact is, Hartford is a bad deal, and the people of Hartford are now going to be on the hook for close to, take your pick, again, like you were saying, Tony, it's anywhere between $5 and $10 million. And this has turned out to be a bad deal for Connecticut, a bad deal for Hartford. Like I say, the people of New Britain, like I said, I think they're having a great big laugh over all of this. I supported that team very well for a very long
years
time.
And years.
But it just goes to show the greed that runs from the head of the snake in professional sports down to the lowest minor leagues.
Well, and you could go all the way back to Lou Perini in 1952 with the Boston Braves. And, Lou Perini, who did it, he did it in 2 successive decades. The man was incredible. But, and it's always been this thing of, okay, the fans will root, but the owners will put their economic interests first. This one, at least to me, understanding that, not being, for this purpose, not being a virgin, it just seemed like a very dumb thing to do.
Absolutely. Hartford, I don't know if there's going to be coming back for Hartford. It just has such a bad image that, you know what, even though you get the ballpark built there, who's going to hang around afterwards? I mean, in New Britain, as soon as the game was over, people were out of there. Don't forget, you're talking about an area, for the most part in New Britain, where they drew from around towns where people, as soon as the game was over, had to get out of there. You're bringing families to games. The kids get a little tired. They want to go to bed, whatever. Who's going to hang around afterwards? If minor league ball, which fancies itself as being family-friendly entertainment, G-rated and plenty of contests and all this other kind of stuff, you get those kids, they've been out there for a couple of hours, going nuts on cotton candy and soda and snacks and stuff. They're worn out by the 6th, 7th inning. So, if you want to go out and have dinner or something, Connecticut. It just stunk right from the start, and there was just something, that Tim McCarver liked to say, that dog won't hunt. That dog didn't hunt right from the start, and if that dog went hunting, boy, it wandered off the path.
Well, and the question that I ask myself is the parent club, whom I believe is the Rockies, the Colorado Rockies.
Yes.
What is their commitment to Hartford?
Well, the Rockies have a history in Connecticut.
Yeah.
Don't forget, they were the original
The parent of the New Haven
the
Ravens.
New Haven Ravens.
Yeah.
Yes, playing at Yale Field there, and they eventually bailed out there because Yale Field wasn't a viable
Right.
facility. Although I tell you, I loved it myself. You just walk on that field, and there's so much history. You think of Babe Ruth standing there with George Bush as the Yale first baseman back in 1947. Frank Viola, pitching for St. John's there in that NCAA tournament game they had there. So the Rockies and Connecticut, yeah, kind of a rocky history. They had such a good thing going with the Minnesota Twins for such a long time in New Britain, and it's you honestly don't think of the Rockies having a commitment here. It's you haven't heard from anybody involved with the Colorado Rockies with this whole thing. So that leads you to wonder.
It does lead you to wonder, and it might be a case of silence speaking volumes. It's just, of all the things that could happen in the state, anybody picking up a newspaper, to perhaps be a little anachronistic, and think of Connecticut, and what do you think of? Well, this is the state that can't build a minor league ballpark, and this is the state that lost GE.
And this was the state that Robert Kraft took to town 20 years ago to get a stadium deal, and not so much the stadium. The stadium is privately financed, but the infrastructure around it to keep the Patriots in Foxborough. That's one reason among many why I don't understand that anybody in Connecticut is a Patriots fan after what Robert Kraft did to this state. A lot of people got their hopes up over that. They actually thought the Patriots were eventually going to come to Hartford, and there wasn't a chance that the NFL was ever going to let that happen.
I am so happy you brought that up because no one seems to remember that. And it probably had to be, I'm going to use here a somewhat obtuse term, probably had to be the best episode of pimping a public official, Robert Kraft to John Rowland.
Oh, John Rowland was so out of his element there, and I know the governor.
I said it,
know
folks.
Him pretty well, met him on several occasions, had a chance to talk with him, and he's personally to me he's a nice guy. Obviously that's subject to a lot of people's opinions and thoughts on him, but he was just totally out of his league with Robert Kraft, and unfortunately Connecticut paid a price for it in image and prestige, along with losing the Whalers.
It's amazing, and you wonder the whole thing coming back to UConn and the buildup in UConn and Rentschler Field and all that, how much of that really is kind of a rebound syndrome in what Connecticut lost.
Yeah, it's true. It's like saying, we did something, but you want to talk about another boondoggle? Take a look at, we talked about Yale Field a moment ago. How about what's sitting across the street from it, that Connecticut Tennis Center? That is another white elephant on the back of Connecticut. Thank you, Lowell Weicker.
And how many people go to watch that tournament every year? They don't even show the crowd.
No, they don't. It's, and there's a wonderful woman who ran it for so many years named Ann Worcester, who put her heart and soul into it, and not to belittle or the people who are running it or organizing it or anything. They do yeoman's work, and it's for good causes. But you know what? It's just in such a poor place on the calendar before the United States Open. It was like for many years. Remember, they couldn't seem to get the scheduling of it used to be called the GHO. They couldn't get it right. They couldn't fit it
Right
on the calendar so that it would be apart enough from a major to draw the big names.
to draw in major
to
participants.
Hartford.
Yeah.
And then one year Greg Norman won it, and he didn't want to come back the next year to play in it and defend his championship, but he felt an obligation to, and wouldn't you know it, the second day of the tournament, he discovered, I was playing with an illegal ball. And Saturday morning, he calls a 6 a.m. press conference, and he's probably having lunch down on his deck in Florida by lunchtime. The stories about Connecticut, huh?
You know, it's amazing. The other thing is, unless I have someone like you speaking this, you don't get this information anywhere.
You don't. Well, it's not that I'm smarter than anybody else or have more knowledge than anybody else. It's just that, when you're on the air, Tony, at a commercial station on one of the newscasts or something like that, number one, I'm sure you're compromised by a lot of business interests and sponsors and whatever, and you're reading off a teleprompter, or you have just a few moments to make a point, and you definitely can't get everything in. That's why a forum like this is so great. That you do a great show, and I'm honored to be a part of it. But it gives me a chance to put points of view out there that you might not necessarily hear because on a commercial station, you go on a WTIC or something like that, and you're a host of a show, and you say something, well, I'm sure within a few minutes, somebody who represents that special interest you criticize is going to be on the air to the program director, and next thing you know is you're being called on the carpet afterwards to tone it down.
It's amazing, and you're absolutely right. And we can also talk about the fact of stations taking economic development money. In my poor little ignorant mindset, I always thought that the Fourth Estate was supposed to be separate from everything else, so it could tell the truth. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I've worked in newsrooms and at places where there is almost no more dividing line between advertising interests and editorial interests, and I've heard some, and it's always on the sales side, they call it advertorial.
Oh dear!
And it's yes, exactly. That's how I feel every time I hear that word. And it's like the ever creeping entertainment factor in sports that I think has sullied the whole experience of attending a sporting event and following sports now. That what is this? Is this athletic competition, or is it is it Broadway?
You raise so many valid points. My mind just kind of spins.
I know, me too. As I'm saying this, it's just a stream of consciousness.
It's absolutely amazing, and sadly, I guess we can conclude by saying we'll continue to watch this morass in Hartford, and let's see if they get a stadium together by Memorial Day.
And you know what? I'm sure that's a date that I don't know if it's necessarily etched in stone. I think it may be, scrawled in sand, waiting for a wave to wash over it. Because if we have any more severe weather, we've been lucky so far this winter.
We really have.
Any winter in which I'm out playing golf on the day after Christmas is okay with me. But, you just wonder how much longer our luck is going to hold. If the ground freezes, if you have, delays because of big weather, be it rain, snow, ice, whatever, how much farther does that push it back? Like I say, I think that mark between May 17th and May 31st, don't etch it in stone.
I would agree. And moving along to the AFC Championship, what did you think? Were you surprised?
No. The Broncos had beaten the Patriots before. I thought the Broncos had the Patriots right where they wanted them, which was in Denver. There's no question in my mind, had that game been played in Foxborough, the Patriots probably win it. But if you get them out of Foxborough, get them out of the comfort zone, get them in front of a hostile crowd, I picked the Broncos to win that game, and I was happy they did, quite frankly, because I'm no fan of the Patriots. That's another thing that's making it a great winner. The Patriots aren't playing in the Super Bowl. It's going to be interesting. We're going to hear a lot about it unrelentingly over the next 12 days. But, this is one of the game's all-time greats. And, he did what he had to do on Sunday, and the defense took it from there, especially in the second half.
It really was an incredible performance, and seeing Brady get hit time after time after time. The only time I think I've seen something worse was when Brett Favre was getting run over by the New Orleans Saints. It was just not good.
That's true. I wonder how often Brady looked at those guys coming and had Justin Tuck, Michael Strahan, JTP flashbacks. But when you think about it, you're used to seeing quarterbacks get hit. You're not used to seeing Tom Brady get hit.
No, not at all.
And it wasn't just Brady, but Edelman, Gronkowski, they all took some shots from that Denver defense. And, those guys like to get up and bark after every play they make. As the game went on, they weren't barking too much.
Yeah, I noticed that, and it kind of makes you wonder what's going to happen to him going into next year, because these guys take incredible poundings going forward.
Well, they sure do, and it was funny, but I brought this theory up to somebody yesterday, and he wasn't too pleased with me, but it's something to chew on. I said, you have to start thinking about, as great as they are, and there's no question they're Hall of Famers, but are Belichick and Brady maybe the most overrated quarterback-coach combination? Think about it. They've won one Super Bowl in 11 years, and that was handed to them last year by the most atrocious play call in NFL history when you consider the situation. So without that play call by Pete Carroll, these two are 11 years without a championship.
And you never really consider it in those terms.
Well, you think about it, Tony, it goes along the same timeline as the 1990s Yankees go. Let's say you have Derek Jeter there. He wins 4 World Series his first 5 years. Then there's that dry spell until 2009. Same thing for the Patriots. Brady wins with 3 of his first 4, and then a decade without. So, you can, and I know New York and Boston fans don't like to draw comparisons to each other. Boston fans go, well, the Yankees went all that time, blah, blah, blah. Well, now it's right back at you. And like I say, I'm not denying, how great they are, but, it's one in 11 years, and like I say, that, anybody who's objective about it will say it was a gift. So, you've got to start questioning what's going on. Can the Patriots, get the job done?
Yeah, for certain, and I mean, the Jets played them very hard this year.
When you think about it, the Jets, the last 2 years, Tony, should have beaten them all 4 times they played each other. If you take a look, it came down the 2 games last season when it was Rex Ryan's 4-12 team. If the Jets kick a field goal in both games, they win. And that would have changed the whole outlook of things. The Patriots probably don't get, home field advantage in the playoffs if the Jets even win one of those games. Then you had the first game this past season up in Foxborough, where for want of Brandon Marshall holding on to a ball in the end zone that would have made the score 21-7 in the third quarter, the Jets would have beaten them twice again this year. So, but that's why we play the games. It gives it's something to talk about. You can speculate. It's all, it's all hypothetical. Just like the whole thing over Gostkowski missing the extra point. That wasn't the reason the Patriots lost the game. And you feel sorry for that guy. I heard he withdrew from the Pro Bowl today, and it can't be because of an injury. He was one of 6 Patriots to pull out of the game, from what I understand. So, you just wonder if the guy's already kind of going into a shell that he doesn't want to deal with, being asked questions or being out in the open about it. And you feel sorry for a guy like that, because obviously he's a great kicker, a Hall of Fame kicker, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you just think of like the Don Newcombs and the Ralph Brancas and all these people who had something unfortunate and they never were quite the same. And you don't want to see that happen to him. Jim, believe it or not, we're out of time. Where can our friends and fans reach you?
Well, I'm at the Town Times in Watertown, Connecticut. I'm the sports editor there, and you can reach me
Also here, and we'll have you back. Listen, you have a great night. Thanks for being with us, and I guess happy motoring going into the spring in Connecticut.
Okay, thank you very much, Tony. Take care. Be well.
You too. Bye now. And that was Jim Dreher. Sit back. We have got some incredible retromercials for you, and I laugh at them, and I'm going to tell you about them on the other way out. Tony D'Angelo here on Coast to Coast. See you in a moment.
Mickey who?
You know who, the fellow with the celebrated swing. Oh, I love Mickey.
Mickey who?
You know who, the one who...
Hold me, never let me go until you told me.
Now, if you're my age, you might have heard that way back when and said, that's Mel Carter. But that was Mel Carter a long time ago. And I've got Mel Carter here, and believe me, Mel is doing some incredibly wonderful new things that he sent over and he'd like to discuss tonight. And first of all, my friend, how are you? And it's so nice to be speaking with you again.
Yes, I'm good. I'm good. And it's nice speaking with you. And I'm thankful. And it's a happy, good start of a new year.
And
Maybe not for some people in the country because of the weather, but out here on the West Coast, it's heaven.
you haven't complained about that for being a Cincinnati kid, huh?
Right. Oh, man, are you kidding? Like when I see the pictures of the snow and everything like that, it just reminds me when I was a kid. When it snowed in Cincinnati, it just shut down. I loved it because we didn't have to go to school, you know?
Yeah. That's amazing, but I am, this new record album, CD, presentation that you've done, Mel Carter Continues. I was doing the sports show last night with my friend Bob Lazzari, who sends his best. Bob's father had a music store in Ansonia, Connecticut for a number of years, and I had mentioned that you and I would be speaking on the air, and Bob was so excited, and he started singing all your music as we were doing the sports show, and he said, you know, please tell Mel Carter this. I owe him a great deal because my father sold so many of his records, I probably wouldn't have been able to stay in school but for Mel Carter. You know?
Oh, that's a good thing. I haven't heard that one before, but I'll take it.
So tell me what the inspiration was for the new presentation.
Actually, it's a continuation of from the other three, the other two CDs that I did before, The Heart and Soul of Mel Carter and Mel Carter, The Other Standards. And the reason I continued with doing I've done standards and stuff before, but like they're not the standards that the Gershwins, the Harold Arlens, or the people that do them over and over and over and over. But these are songs that are standards, and when you hear them, you say, "Oh yes, I remember that song. I remember that song by that artist." And that's what I wanted to do: go back and just find the perfect songs and do homage to the artist that did them, and to put my stamp on them.
Some of the works were so touching, and I'm going to pull out several of my favorites. The first one is If I Didn't Care, and Mike, would you play a sample of this?
The Ink Spots.
Yes. Or Fred Sanford.
If I didn't care more than words can say, if I didn't care, would I feel this way?
gorgeous. That is just a wonderful piece of work. Mel, are you there?
Thank you. My friend Ricky Woodard, who is the saxophonist, the tenor saxophonist.
Yes.
He's just a great guy. He's a great musician. All of them are, really.
You've got such a, it's something when the old music is redone of someone with a heart and a soul and a feeling from it with the modern technology and with the great musicians. It's marvelous. And the other one I wanted to play is you're singing here with Lenny Welch, and my friend Bob and I, he couldn't stop talking about that, and it's magnificent. So Mike, will you roll this?
Lenny is one of my best friends in the business. One of my best friends, and whenever we get together, I mean, we're just crazy. We just have a fun time. And this is the title song from a show that I wrote that we did excerpts from it in Vegas a few years ago. We finally got a chance to come together and do the recording and the Legends of Rock and Roll. And if you visit YouTube and where other people have outtakes from shows,
yes,
we call ours intake, and we are just crazy. That's all I can say is that we're certifiable.
It's so great hearing you guys together. Why don't we give this one?
We're still young, we're still kicking. We sang our songs, and you fell in love. Those were happier times when we were free in our minds. That's when we became the legends of rock and roll. Some of us may have gone to that great beyond, but the songs that we sang will live on and on. The songs made you happy then, they make you feel good now. We're the legends of rock and roll. Remember when we danced through the night?
It's magnificent work, and how far does your friendship with Lenny go back?
As well over 25 years. We met on a concert that we were doing in Cincinnati at the Music Hall, and he had told me that he was listening to my music for years, and I said, "Man, I've been listening to your music." And
oh, isn't that sweet?
We became instant friends, and we have been friends for well over those 25 years. And then he moved here on the West Coast. He was here for about 18 years, and now he's relocated in Florida. He just moved back to the East Coast, and we still talk to each other, 2-3 times a week. And he's just a great guy. He really is. And we have fun together when it's fun to perform, and really to perform with somebody else who can, that inspirational thing that goes on between the two of you.
And you could really hear the camaraderie in your voices as you're singing.
Yeah. And not only that, it's like a perfect match, blend. When we sing together, it's not one out. We blend. So it's a very melodious sound that we have together.
Have you guys talked about touring or doing concerts?
We hopefully we can go and do the show again. The Legends of Rock and Roll, the Balladeers. I'm writing more music for it. It's one of the other tunes on the album. On the album, I'm dating myself. On the CD, it's not the letting go that hurts. It's the holding on that tears you apart. That's another song from the show, as well.
here's a hope and a wish that you're able to do that, because I think you should. I think it would be wonderful.
Yes, I do too. So, I'm sending it out there. Whoever's listening, and you got the bucks.
Get these guys singing. We need to see them. Man, tell me something. How did you get involved in this crazy career with music?
Actually, I was born in it. I've been doing this since I'm like 6 years old, singing in church. At 9 years old, I won some contest there in Cincinnati, Ohio, and got to sing with the Lionel Hampton Band. I was on a TV show called Betty and the Boys when I was 6, where they used to sit me on the piano and I would sing. Then working with some great gospel singers in my teenage years, Robert Anderson, Raymond Raspberry, and did some work with Mahalia Jackson. And then meeting and being tutored by Sam Cooke.
Right.
Came to California. I was Sam's protege, but I had known him in Chicago, singing when I was singing with Robert Anderson, and then meeting Quincy Jones. How could you not? The people that I worked with, Quincy Jones, Sam Cooke. God, now the name escapes me. But some of the people that I used to go to the movies and get whippings because I would stay all day and past my curfew time, and and I work with these people, and it's just some of the like Ella Fitzgerald, meeting Ella Fitzgerald, meeting Lena Horne. Meeting Sarah Vaughan, we're talking about some, and then, in the rock and roll field and some of the jazz field, and then coming into my own. It's a dream. It's a dream. I'm still living it, and that's, I'm thankful for that.
And
I get to do interviews with you.
And I'm thankful for that. But and I know Sam's passing is still bearing upon you.
It is. If you, on one of the songs, I always do a Sam Cooke run. His signature run. Mm-hmm. And I try to place that in maybe one or two of the ballads that I do. That I've always done, and that's paying homage to him.
I understand that. You had also dabbled in some acting, from what I recall.
The acting?
Yes.
The acting is just a normal thing that back in the day, like when you had hit records, they would just move you into other areas of show business. Mm-hmm. We've done commercials. I've done episodic television shows. I've done film. I've done stage. I've had a chance to explore all of the entertainment aspects about myself, and pretty lucky to have made some kind of mark in all in show business, and I'm thankful for that.
And as in your legend continues. Now, when you were a young singer starting out, the hit record, the notoriety, was the Fast Society thing kind of a, I don't want to say a burden, but was that something you had to either learn or learn your way around?
I didn't understand.
When you were you had your first hit record, Hold Me, Thrill Me, Kiss Me, and actually you had one before that. And
A Boy Falls in Love.
When a Boy Falls in Love. Was the Fast Society thing, and everybody wanting you everywhere, and everything is wonderful. Was that kind of a hard thing to bear? The temptations, if you will.
No, you know what? Because I had my parents, especially my mother, kept me grounded. I give you a story of when I first had When a Boy Falls in Love. I remember, like on certain day, garbage day, you have to put the garbage out, right? And I was pretty high on the charts then, and my mom said, "Get up, put the garbage out." Leave the garbage out, and the guys on the truck, hey, that's Mel Carter. Mel, what you doing putting garbage out? So that's the kind of mom and that's the kind of parents that I was. They kept me grounded. So, and that's a stabilizing force in my life, which means I didn't go overboard. I was never allowed to go overboard because, they told me, you're still, as long as you're under my roof, you will obey my rules. There you go.
Yeah, and you're here because of it, which is great.
Yeah.
And you also were friends with Dick Clark, from what I recall.
We did a lot of shows. I think I did 42 weeks with him, and we got to know each other. Dick was that kind. He was a hands-on guy. He traveled with us, and every other night we spent in a hotel. Every other night we were on the bus. So because he was the leader, and had the name, he could have done it another way, but he didn't. He took the bus and did all of the things with us, and I appreciate that fact about him. So when you see the interviews that he does with all the artists, you can see how open the artist is with him because he was a genuine guy.
That does show through. That really does show. That really does show through. And all of the traveling and all of the work and all of the road shows and all of the commitments, is that hard on your family life?
I think it's hard if you are if you have a family. Lucky enough for me that when it first happened, I was very, very young. So I wasn't tied up to somebody. I didn't have a child. I was free, and I didn't have to think about leaving somebody somewhere
Understand.
and coming back to them, or when I'm away, being so attached that I couldn't concentrate on what the job was and what for me to do. I was interested in the career, and wanting to be where other people that I admired, how far up the ladder they were, and I wanted to make that climb that ladder.
Understand. Now, if I were to say to you, who is your favorite male vocalist of all time, what would you tell me?
Oh, wow, of all time. God. Well, naturally, Sam would have to be one of them.
Yeah.
Billy Eckstein would have to be another. And there was a guy named Arthur Prysock. And then I have some people that I truly admired in the opera field as well. So there isn't any one particular.
Understand.
Because I sang so high, I most listen to female artists opposed to the male artists. But those are the ones that I would say. But
now, your favorite female, would it be Ella?
One of them,
Mm-hmm.
Ella, Sarah Vaughan, Mahalia Jackson. God, there's so many.
There's so many. Yeah, it's almost an unfair question.
When people put you in this spot and say, "Who's your best?"
Yeah.
And there are seasons and there are times when one artist is like stands out over the other. Of all time, I don't know about that.
I understand. Is there anyone you're following today that you like?
Well, I forgot to say Johnny Mathis. Yes.
Yeah.
Because I think
He's classic.
every balladeer that was coming up, thought of Johnny Mathis as the cream of the crop. I'm sorry, I missed the other question you were saying.
Oh, no, and that was pretty much it. Who you're following today, and what I can certainly see Johnny Mathis.
I like the guy Bruno Mars. I like Harry Connick Jr. I probably don't know the names of some of the other people. The one guy who had just came off this tremendously big hit that plays piano. Can't think of his name.
Yeah, it's. I love the fine, heartfelt vocals, and that's something that you've done so well, and it's really nice to see how you plug into this and how you appreciate others. In your life right now, getting the show together, which believe me, I'll be hoping and praying and talking about it. Anything you'd like to do beyond that, or is kind of like let's go here and let's get the show together with Lenny and we'll see what happens from that point?
I would like to do more writing. Number one, I would like to produce. There are a number of artists that I know that I would like to produce. I kind of like behind the scenes as well as
performing,
putting the show together, putting the things together.
Mm-hmm.
I like that, and I want to do more of that too, and more writing, especially since you guys out there are liking what I'm writing. That is so cool.
Well, you have such a history and a character, and like that Ink Spot song, If I Didn't Care. How many people really know that and are hearing it for the first time and thinking this is absolutely unbelievable? And I mean, and believe me, this is no offense to the Ink Spots, but that's like older than dirt for and it's like, and you're making it new and relevant again, which I think is just so incredibly fantastic.
I got to tell you something. I had the hardest time with that. I've always loved the song, but the lead singer of the Ink Spots was so stylized that every time we would try to do the song, I could hear his voice, and I was mimicking him. And it took me a long time until I went. There's a film. I don't remember the name of the film. The girl that did it on the nightclub scene did it. Amy. I don't remember her last name. But I was watching it, and that's how I got his voice out of my head. Able to, songs that I look for songs that have a story, that have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so it's my job to paint a picture for you to visualize as I'm singing. And feel the emotion. That's what my mission is in creating music.
Well, I'll tell you, and oh, how you have succeeded on that for years and years, and oh, how you will succeed in years to come. And Mel, I can't believe it. We're coming up to our closing minutes. I know you're on Facebook. I know your CD, Mel Carter Continues, is available on CD Baby and iTunes. And where else may our fans look for you?
You can come to mel-carter.com. Okay, you can go to cdbaby.com. You can go to iTunes, Amazon, and any of the affiliates out there that in cyberspace that you pieces, that it's available. And we're just getting out there and doing programs like this. Hopefully that's going to bring it all the way to the foreground.
Well, we're doing what we can here, and we've been so honored and blessed to have you. Stay well, stay healthy, keep singing. Happy New Year. Best to Mr. Welsh when you see him, and we'll talk again, my friend, when you're doing the tour.
All righty, you take care of yourself.
Thank you. You too. Bye now.
Happy New Year to you all.
Thank you. And that was the legendary Mel Carter, and so pleased to have him. And we will be joined in a second by David Andelman of the World Policy Institute. Tony D'Angelo's Coast to Coast. Round the third, heading home. See ya back here in a moment. The neat part about this show is you get to talk to all sorts of people. People who I read their accomplishments, and I stand in gratitude. I have such a gentleman for you, David Andelman, columnist of USA Today, editor emeritus of the World Policy Journal, formerly of the New York Times, CBS News, Forbes executive editor, president emeritus, and the Overseas Press Club. And David, how are you?
I'm well, and I'm for a good start for the new year.
And this is a wonderful thing. I was here on Saturday, in our little studios in Pomfret, Connecticut, and I was putting this together. And people, it's funny how they end up in life through any number of different things. And when I read your biography, when I reread it, you had such a bent towards government and international affairs and the affairs of state. Was this something that you were really, really, really intent on studying when you were very young?
Well, I actually started off majoring in theoretical physics at Harvard, and I finally concluded very quickly, actually, that I wouldn't be much of a physicist. So I'd always been fascinated by history. I became a history major, diplomatic history. I wrote my honors thesis in that, and I became very active in media, Harvard media, the Harvard Crimson, the newspaper, as news director of WHRB for 3 years during the time of the Kennedy assassination, which I guess only dates me, doesn't it? That was in 19...
That must have been an incredible time to be at Harvard.
It really was, and not only at Harvard, but the whole country. I was at the March on Washington, and when Martin Luther King took the March on Washington to the nation's capital, and was right in front of him, about 10 feet away from him when he delivered his I Have a Dream speech. So it was an interesting time to start off in the journalistic career field, and then I didn't really give a passing thought to making history my life, and I loved history. But I decided I'd rather be reporting on issues and people who historians would be thinking about decades later, rather than looking backward. I'd like to be looking to the present and forward. So that's what I did.
It's interesting, and thank you for sharing that. Now, I do understand you've recently left the World Policy Journal, and and tell us about your time there.
Well, I spent nearly 8 years there. It's a very interesting magazine. It's the publication of the World Policy Institute, and it's almost 35 years old. I was the 4th editor in its history. I'm still editor emeritus and consultant to World Policy Journal, so I have great affection for the magazine. It started out when I first was there as a very scholarly publication, and in the end, we morphed it into a publication I think is really accessible to a very broad audience interested
Yeah, and no doubt, and I've enjoyed reading it. Also, enjoying reading your book, A Shattered Peace and the Price We Pay Today, about the Treaty of Versailles. And when we had spoken, I guess it was a little bit over a year ago, you had brought me to a frame of reference that all of the issues that are in the Middle East today started with the Treaty of Versailles. And I've never really considered it in those parameters or through that prism, so to speak. And share with us a little bit about that and where that particular piece of work has taken you.
Well, not only the Middle East, but many other parts of the world as well were really shaped and we should say misshaped by the leaders of the Western Alliance that came to Paris in 1919 to end World War I and create the Versailles Treaty. They really had very little understanding of the world that they were creating, but they did create a world that was very much, or they tried to make very much in their image, with little understanding of the people who lived in it. So, for instance, in the Middle East, they had no sense that there were Kurds and Sunnis and Shiites all in the same Mesopotamian area that they created Iraq out of, and no understanding that it might be difficult for Jews and Arabs to live cheek by jowl in one country and what became Israel. So there were a whole host of issues like that they dealt with in creating new countries and in redrawing boundaries and so on. That was very, very difficult. And they did the same in other parts of the world. They created a country called Yugoslavia in the Balkans out of 6 independent countries, which ultimately was broken up. Great bloodshed, nearly 100 years later, into 6 different individual countries, from Serbia to Croatia, Slovenia, Slovakia, and so on. And the same with, in other parts of the world as well. They really laid the basis for just a host of future conflicts that were most unfortunate and might have been avoided, in fact, if they had been a little bit more sensitive, a little bit more knowledgeable of just what they were doing.
It's an amazing thing, which leads us to Afghanistan. And 15 years now, the United States has been involved in Afghanistan, and the Soviets were involved in Afghanistan, and no one's ever really been able, at least in my little frame of reference, to solve or democratize or clean up, if you will, Afghanistan. And how best do you describe, David, the situation that exists today, and what fixes it, if anything?
Well, again, we should learn from history a little bit. It was when the British were the Raj, and when they owned or ran all of colonial India and Pakistan, which was then one country, as I say, the Raj. They actually sent a group of surveyors and diplomats up to what would become the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. And they defined and they said, this area west is Afghanistan. It's a mess. We don't want any part of it. It is a collection of feudal tribes, all of whom hate each other and will continue warring among each other all the time. We want to rule the area to the east of that, Pakistan and India, where we can establish a rule of law, where we can establish some degree of responsibility, and we can move these countries towards a sense of democracy. We understand that there is nothing but chaos to the west of that line and order to the east of that line. And this was in the 19th century. Things haven't changed very much since then, frankly.
Certainly doesn't seem that way.
And that's the problem. And a succession of foreign countries have tried to come in there. Most recently, as you mentioned, first the Russians, then this was during the Cold War, of course. We made every effort we could to ally ourselves with certain elements that were fighting the Russians, among them with the Taliban. So we helped the Taliban get rid of Afghanistan of the Russians. And we armed them to the point where they were then able to take over the country and give, play host to places to organizations like
Well, it certainly seems that history is bearing that out. And it's the kind of thing where we're not conscious, or at least I'm not conscious every day, that the United States is still in Afghanistan. Well, vis-a-vis Vietnam, not only did you know the United States was in Vietnam every day, you knew every minute the United States was in Vietnam. And I guess that's a sign of the times, if you will.
Well, it's very interesting. If people ask me, they say, isn't Afghanistan or isn't Iraq sort of a modern-day, latter-day Vietnam? And I covered the wars in Indochina at the very end, the very tail end of them for the New York Times when I was sent out there. So I understood a little bit about how those wars worked. The fact is that I think the wars in Indochina were the last wars where we actually knew where the enemy was. You knew who the enemy was. You knew what they looked like. Usually dressed in like black pajamas or something. They were up by the tree line there. We were on this side. We fired at them. They fired at us. One side eventually won that battle, moved on to the next. Nowadays, and I saw last night a very interesting movie, which I would commend to all of your listeners. 13 Hours, the story of Benghazi. It's an extraordinary film.
Second person that's mentioned that to me
Basically
today.
said was, there was one line by one of the characters, and they were driving through downtown Benghazi in Libya at the height of at the height of then American involvement and terrorism against the Americans. And one of them said, the problem is we can't tell who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. And we can't. They all look alike. They look alike. I mean, they sound alike. They speak the same language. They dress in the same manner. They have the same, everything alike. And it's very dismaying.
And thank you, because you're the second person that's mentioned that movie today. And I will certainly go and see it, but you're absolutely right. And it seems that no discussion of Afghanistan is complete without talking a little bit about John Kerry. How do you rate his performance as Secretary of State?
Well, I think he's really done quite a remarkable job. I mean, he came in where it's a series of situations where there had been no progress and nothing had been done. I try to be reasonably objective as a journalist, and I haven't decided who I'd vote for president. And when I do, I will not tell anybody because it's something that is a private choice by an individual. But I try to be fair to all parties. And I look at what John Kerry has done in the time that he's been in office, and I can name some of his accomplishments. I have a great deal of difficulty naming the accomplishments of his predecessor, other than going to quite any number of countries all over the world. I think it was somewhere over 100. As basically, I call it a diplomatic tourist. But Kerry has done some really remarkable things. He has given us, in the Middle East, he has given us a way of pausing the situation with respect to Iran, so that we don't have another nation for the next 10 years at least with a nuclear weapon that can skew the whole balance of power in that part of the world. Whether they eventually come up with a nuclear weapon is entirely possible. But we have, thanks to this nuclear agreement, we have a breathing space of 10 years where we can try to make some kind of progress on some of the most difficult issues of our time in that part of the world. So that's one accomplishment. The second accomplishment is, he's trying to do something in Afghanistan. I frankly think the Taliban is doing everything they possibly can to kill that. I did a column wrote a column for USA Today end of last week.
I saw that.
Talking about how the latest series of Taliban attacks against Pakistani targets may have effectively killed the prospect of talks with the Taliban. But at least we're out there looking and examining and trying to understand who the forces are at work there. I'm not sure, frankly, that is necessarily a fruitful avenue of pursuit, because I'm not sure that we really can talk to the forces of the Taliban that really matter in terms of peace in that part of the world.
It's yeah, and talk about an unenviable job being Secretary of State. It's almost like you're an umpire at a baseball game. Your highest compliment is silence.
Well, the one problem with I think a lot of administrations, and I go back to the time of Henry Kissinger, because I think he really is the last person who had a handle on this. Kissinger, I took a course at Harvard with Kissinger. He was my teacher for a while.
Wow.
And that was before he, of course, ever went into government. He has a concept which he tried to follow through called Weltanschauung, a worldview. And I do believe that the only kind of American administration that's ever really been successful in international affairs is one that goes into a global situation with a worldview, a sense of what do you want the world to look like when you wind up your 4 years or your 8 years. I think Kissinger had that sense, and Richard Nixon. I think Reagan, to a degree, had that sense in terms of wanting to bring an end to the Cold War and an end to communism as a political force, certainly in Eastern Europe and other parts of the world. And they were very effective in that because they had a vision of where to go. Administrations that come in and don't have that sense of a worldview just ping pong from crisis to crisis, and it's almost like a pinball machine. They don't know where they're going next, and all of a sudden, all they're doing is responding to one crisis after another, with no sense of how they're trying to shape the world in an image that would work for much of the world. So that's my sense of where we are now.
And believe me, extremely clearly explained and well understood. And we were chatting before you had come on the air. Now, of course, we are in a presidential election year, and you watch the debates and who's in the undercard, who's on the main stage, who will be where, what will happen between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, what will happen between Donald Trump and Ted Cruz. I would like to get your opinion. If we took, say, the top four, and we could spend maybe a moment on each, Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, Hillary Clinton, and Bernie Sanders, how, in a nutshell, you might see things developing in the Middle East. We'll start with Donald Trump.
Well, Trump, frankly, I think both Trump and Cruz have a very different sense of Sanders and Clinton. I think that each of those two Republicans, which you mentioned, have a very muscular sense of what the United States role should be there. And I'm not sure that pure muscle will work in a case like that. Certainly not American muscle. We've tried it before. We've tried using our military might in those parts of the world. It doesn't work. It doesn't work because there's no might in the world that can change the minds of people in that part of the world. It's a multi-leveled approach needs to be done, needs to be made in that part of the world. It needs to be diplomatic, it needs to be cultural, it needs to be, to a degree, muscular. But if all you have is muscle, if all you have is send in the Marines, or excuse me, the Air Force or the Army or the Seabees, the SEALs or whatever, I don't want to play favorites on which part of the armed forces we're going there. But any kind of a muscular approach, purely muscular approach in that part of the world has never worked in the past, and it won't work in the future because we will be seen as invaders, and rather than as partners. So I think that both Trump and Cruz, I'm very concerned about what will happen there. Now, my only hope is that once they get into office and once they actually, have a good sense of the power of the presidency, they may begin to understand the need for subtlety and nuance and a worldview that is not a view that springs from the tip of a sword. Now, in terms of Clinton and Sanders, Clinton knows how it all works. She's been there. She was Secretary of State. I don't think she did very much. She accomplished very much, but she at least understands what levers need to be pulled and how to pull them. Sanders, I'm not sure does. I'm concerned about Sanders in international affairs because I'm not sure he has a very good understanding of
It's a mind-boggling question. When I was driving home tonight, I guess there's rumblings of Michael Bloomberg thinking of running.
Right, and I worked for Mike for about 5 years as a news editor at Bloomberg News, and I knew Mike. I have an enormous regard for Mike. I think he really does have a very good understanding of how the world works. I'm not sure he would be successful. A third-party candidate in our two-party system has never managed to break through, at least certainly in the 20th or 21st century. So I don't have much hope for a successful conclusion of any candidacy he might put forward. But I think he would certainly raise some very interesting issues and basically hold up a mirror to these other candidates that would force them to confront some of the issues directly that are important to him and should be important to the American people.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And in my closing question, as time always gets away from us, I was reading in the New York Times today about the recent efforts on the part of the U.S. to broker a truce in the Syrian civil war. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think a truce is absolutely essential in some fashion. If there's ever going to be a means of going after ISIS or Daesh, as they call it over there, while a civil war is going on, you can't also be fighting a war from the outside, which is basically what that is. Basically, we're fighting at least, the Syrian military forces in the Syrian region are fighting at least two different conflicts right now. And if you factor in Turkey and the Kurds as well, it's really three different conflicts. So there's got to be, it seems to me, some means of truce, at least for the moment, and then we figure out who's actually going to be running Syria after we get rid of ISIS. We can't do this serially. We have to do it simultaneously. We have to have a truce, and at the same time, we have to turn our attention to ISIS, and we have to get the forces in that region to understand that if they don't do that, they're sunk. They'll wind up being another failed state like Libya, and I'm not sure that the world can afford that at this point. I hate to leave on such
A sad note, but yeah.
Depressive note, but I think there is hope, and I think we can reach some kind of an agreement, some kind of a truce in that part of the world, and I think we can move towards a coordinated response to ISIS. But I'll leave you with one final thought.
Sir.
I've come to know the King of Jordan a bit, and I asked him once how he saw ISIS basically being defeated, and he said the only way it's going to be defeated is by the people on the ground in those regions deciding they've had enough, and that that's not the way they want their lives to lead, and that their homes, their people to be led, and only then will the people rise up, and they are the only ones who can really rid the world of ISIS. So that's my hope for the future.
And I'm going to hope along with you, and I'm very honored to have your presence tonight. David Andelman.
It's an honor to be on your show.
Thank you, sir. Columnist, USA Today, Editor Emeritus, World Policy Journal, formerly New York Times, CBS News, Bloomberg, Forbes Executive Editor, and the President Emeritus of the Overseas Press Club. David, we'll have you on again.
And author of A Shattered Peace, Versailles 1919, and The Price We Pay Today.
And we're still paying. Oh, my Lord. So we'll certainly chat going down through the year, my friend, and take care and have a great night.
Thank you. You too. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That was David Andelman talking about the Middle East. And it's getting closer than you think, folks. We're going to be coming right back and saying our goodbyes. And it's been quite a show.
It's not the pale moon